What's going on, everybody? C4 here, and today, Combine weekend, well in effect. I'm exhausted from watching. I've literally watched every minute so far of the Scouting Combine, and I'm starting to worry that maybe just because, you recency bias, that is the always biggest thing. You kind of ignore a little bit of the tape, and you focus on more of what you saw during the drills at the Combine, which is, valid. I think how they perform in a combine, especially in the drills, and the quarterback position, which is what we're talking about today, is very important. And I'm trying my best not to, have too much recency bias as we jump in to the top 5 quarterback rankings post-combine 2.0, the final list of rankings I will release. Before we jump into the top 5, let's look at my first edition rankings where we had guys positioned. At number 5, we had Davis Webb, and for a tie between 4 and 3, we had Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. Number 2 was Deshaun Kaiser, and number 1 was Mitch. Now wants to go by Mitchell Trubisky from North Carolina. Lots of things have changed. I originally wrote this down. I have a bunch of, usually I try to be nice and neat in my notes. I do it an old school way. I buy a little notebook, and I like to write as opposed to having, a PDF or a Word document. And I've changed this actually a couple times through watching the Combine and through watching all the on-field drills. And I think now I'm pretty content with my top 5. Again, I hate to do this at the sake of just trying to be different for the sake of being different, but I just have a gut feeling about one of these guys. I've talked about him heavily in the first video, and I'm going to go a little bit more on it in this one. So, at number 5 for the quarterback position, I have Patrick Mahomes from Texas Tech, 6'3", 215 pounds at the Combine. We're only really going to talk about the 40 because, the jumps and stuff like that doesn't really matter to a quarterback. You're in a 4.80 40, and I actually thought that was a little bit slow for him. I thought he would be able to creep up in the 4.7s. He looks faster in pads than he did test because he was borderline dual threat, I would like to think, at Texas Tech. A lot of times in the red zone, he just kept it himself because he was shifty and agile enough to find the end zone, which is why in 2016 his final stats were 5,052 passing yards, 41 touchdowns to 10 picks, and 12 rushing touchdowns. My pro comparison actually differs a little bit from what analysts, draft experts say. I still think I see a lot of Derek Carr in him. Unfortunately, I think Derek Carr actually had a really good 40 time. Derek Carr ran like a 4.7, 4.6, something like that. But just the style of offense, what Derek Carr looked like at Fresno State and what Patrick Mahomes looks like in Texas Tech. Obviously, you get the similar air raid style, but they have the same looking mechanics. I think Derek Carr is a little bit more refined, and obviously now he's one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. But I think with a guy like Mahomes, definitely draft him to be a project player. I think a team like the Saints or the Cardinals, who still have a year or two, ideally a year or two left in their quarterbacks, they should be all over a guy like Mahomes, who not only can learn under the umbrella of a Carson Palmer or a Drew Brees in those two instances, but they just need that time. It'd be a damn shame if he goes to a team that has a quarterback competition and he has a chance to start day one. I think he should 100% get at least 1 year red-shirted. Jumping to number 4 on this one. Here we go. I have Deshaun Kaiser from Notre Dame, 6'4", 230 pounds. Originally was my number 2 quarterback. Has slipped more so. The tape was inconsistent, but you had to kind of put him at number 2 because of the upside. He has the size you want. He has the athletic ability you want, and he's you have to say maybe even still, even though my opinion has changed on him slightly, he may have the highest ceiling out of any of the quarterbacks. But the tape this year was really, really inconsistent. Wasn't really that impressive. But then again, neither was really anyone on Notre Dame. But at the Combine, he did not look good. He looked really, really bad. And during a lot of the throwing drills, fucking Josh Dobbs was looking more crisper, more refined as a passer than Deshaun Kaiser, which is very, very telling because Dobbs is... That's a pass for me on Josh Dobbs for that. Now he's fallen to number 4. The pro comparison that a lot of scouts have been giving him is Steve McNair. And I wasn't really around when Steve McNair was coming out of college. I assume that's the comparison they're making for the older scouts because obviously I don't see very much of Kaiser and what Steve McNair when he was balling out with the Tennessee Titans. But I mean, the positives for Deshaun Kaiser, big arm, he has mobility, but the problem is questionable mechanics and he's inconsistent, which is, that's a common trait along most of the college quarterbacks making the jump to the NFL. But with a guy like Kaiser, man, mechanics are, you see with Blake Bortles, mechanics, no matter how talented or how athletic or how much upside you have, mechanics will be your downfall if they don't improve. And, just seeing from the drills, man, he had very, very little touch throughout the Combine. Ran a 4.83 40 again. That's still kind of slow, but, being at 6'4", 230 pounds, a big guy, 4.83 is not horrible. His 2016 stats, he had roughly 2,900 passing yards, 26 touchdowns, 9 picks, and 8 rushing touchdowns. I personally still believe Kizer should have waited a year. He might have been able to, erase a lot of question marks if he went back to Notre Dame. Had another strong season. He had that wide receiver there's good, Equanimous Brown, I think, or something crazy like that. Maybe that could have been a nice little combination to help his draft stock a little bit. But right now, he is sitting at number 4. So you're probably trying to scramble, who the fuck does C4 have at number 3? I'm going to tell you. Number 3, Davis Webb from Cal, 6'5", 230 pounds. I said in my first rankings he was my favorite sleeper quarterback in this year's draft class. Now I still kind of have him as a sleeper, but I added another guy because obviously my number 3 quarterback can't be a sleeper. But I like everything about Davis Webb. I thought he actually wasn't even that bad at Texas Tech, but then decided to transfer and went to Cal. Or in all honesty, his tape looks better than what Jared Goff's final year was at Cal. I don't know if I'm the only one that really sees that, but they're different styles. I think with Davis Webb, you get the big arm, great short to mid-range accuracy. The only thing that really struggles with him is he's predictable, and the deep ball is not as consistent as you'd like. But those are two of the most common fixable traits of a quarterback. I think, and you look at guys that can start, that's another reason why. I think a guy like DeShone Kizer and Mahomes might have a little bit more upside than Davis Webb, but a lot of teams, when you're drafting a quarterback, you're looking for a guy that can give you that success right now. There's so many teams right there right now, that need that starting quarterback. Fucking the 49ers don't even have a quarterback on their roster. So I think a guy like Davis Webb is more ready, more pro-ready than guys like Mahomes and DeShone Kizer. Pro comparison from him, I see a little bit of Carson Wentz, actually, when I was watching him at the scouting combine. I think a lot of people are ranting and raving that Webb has certainly helped improve his draft stock. And I think I'm confident right now putting him as my number 3 quarterback. Ran a 4.7 40 as well. Faster than Mahomes, faster than Kizer. And a lot of people thought, he's as big as Kizer. And that was the biggest trait with Kizer, was he was the big guy that was athletic. And Davis Webb tested out a little bit better. So that, going in his favor as well. His 2016 stats were almost 4,300 passing yards, 37 touchdowns, 12 picks, and 6 rushing touchdowns. So yeah, I really have a lot of confidence right now putting Davis Webb as my number 3 quarterback. Going to number 2 is going to be Deshaun Watson from Clemson, 6'3", 221 pounds. Was my number 4. I'm a big fan. He was my number 4 in my 1.0 rankings, but I've said all along Deshaun Watson is my favorite quarterback in this year's draft class. Been a big fan of him since, his first year really at Clemson, where he fucking tore his ACL and still finished the end of the season. That showed the heart, the desire, which is a big, big positive that he already has going in this direction. He's a winner. He has great mobility. The only problem with him is just the same problem that's happened with the last couple Clemson quarterbacks. Taj Boyd comes to mind. It's just the lack of inconsistencies. You need to, when you watch his tape, he'll make 3 good throws. You'll be like, holy shit, this guy is a freak. This guy's a stud. Then he'll go back. The next 3 throws will be terrible. So I think when you look at the positives, he looks like a bona fide first overall pick. But then when you look at the negatives, you have to kind of throw that in, and you have to hope that you go to a team that can certainly coach him up and cut down on those inconsistencies, which can happen. I'm not going to say it will, but I think Watson right now, it's really, really tough. I think if you get the good Deshaun Watson, if it's a good day, he is hot and cold. If he comes in super hot for his rookie season, he can probably start day 1. But I think, again, much like where you look at a guy like Mahomes or Kizer, I think a team that just drafts Deshaun Watson may, like Arizona in particular, would be a great fit for him because he could sit behind Carson Palmer. It seems like he's probably only coming back for 1 year, and then you could look for the 2018 season for Watson to be your starter. But Deshaun Watson ran a 4.66 40. Pro comparison from him is Marcus Mariota, and I think he's not as refined, not nearly as refined or consistent as Mariota, but that is a pretty fair comp in terms of build and play style. But that 4.66 40 was very nice. In his stats in 2016, he had just shy of 4,600 passing yards, 41 touchdowns, 17 picks, and 9 rushing touchdowns. So obviously the interceptions at 17 are fairly high for a quarterback like Watson. But I think all the intangibles that he brings, plus the athletic ability, he will definitely, I'm pulling for him for sure. Definitely my favorite quarterback out of this entire quarterback class in terms of guys I'm pulling for and guys I want to cheer for. But we currently will just have him here at number 2. And then jumping to the number 1 overall quarterback, stays the exact same. It is Mitchell Trubisky from North Carolina, 6'3", 220 pounds. Pro comparison, I actually heard Mike Mayock say he's Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he's a little bit more athletic than Garoppolo, but I usually like to trust Mike Mayock a little bit. So if you're really looking for a pro comparison, I'm going to go for that. I think Trubisky, he doesn't really scream off the board to me as one type of quarterback. You can see a little bit of Derek Carr in him. You can see a little bit of Carson Wentz, that mold of the bigger quarterback that is athletic, that's more accurate than an absolute fucking cannon. obviously those are the strengths for Trubisky. Accurate, he's athletic, but the only problem with his low pocket awareness. But again, that just comes with experience. And if you go to the right scheme, have the right coaches around him, the right team around him, goes to a team hopefully with a good offensive line, that will be all positives for Trubisky. Again, I don't think I could say right now that any of these quarterbacks truly are worth a first-round grade, but Trubisky, he came in with technically the best accuracy and some of the best arm talent, ran a 4.67 40. Incredibly surprising. I thought he was going to be a 4.8, high 4.8s. 4.67. I know he was a dual threat quarterback coming out of high school, but that is still incredibly impressive. That did not really show up much on his North Carolina tape. And his stats in 2016 were 3,700 passing yards, 30 touchdowns, 6 picks, and 5 rushing touchdowns. But I think Mr. Trubisky certainly had himself a very nice combine, and will definitely hold on to that first overall quarterback for this year's draft class. Will he go to the Cleveland Browns? I think, personally, with Trubisky, I can honestly see a team that's not, I want to say maybe the Jets might get him. I don't know. I don't think he'll go 1. I think maybe if he's there at 12, the Browns might take a gamble on him, especially with that newfound 40 time. Hugh Jackson might be coming up with some great, dual threat plays. I think he's Trubisky. I think he's borderline now a dual threat, running that 4.67. He could outrun a lot of players still at the next level. But it's still really tough. Personally, I'm super glad and super excited that I'm super excited, like T Martin, that the Philadelphia Eagles got Carson Wentz when we did get him. But overall, that is my rankings, and here are some quick awards we're going to hand out as we wrap this video up. So for the most NFL ready, we're going with Mitch Trubisky, or Mitchell. He wants to go by Mitchell. They made a big thing about that during the Combine. So most NFL ready is Mitchell Trubisky. Most potential, still kind of have that as DeShone Kizer. I think if he can get the mechanics down, he has the athletic ability to really take off and be, that Cam Newton-esque big body dual threat guy. But like I said, you're going for a potential here. For sleeper, I had originally Davis Webb, who was also my sleeper in the 1.0, but because I put him at number 3, that's not very much of a sleeper, so I'm going to stick with Seth Russell from Baylor. I think he's a little bit more impressive than we got with Bryce Petty, and Bryce Petty was able to start a couple games last year with the Jets, so I think a guy like Seth Russell is currently projected to almost go undrafted, which is kind of crazy. I think he's going to be, at the worst case scenario, a good backup in the NFL. For the bust department, I have to put DeShone Kizer and Deshaun Watson. Both these guys, lots of question marks. And again, another reason why I'm glad I don't have to potentially invest a high pick in one of these guys to see if they can solve my quarterback problems. And for the most improved performance, the guy who was most improved his draft stock from the Combine has to be Mr. Trubisky with that 4.67. I was like, oh my God. Definitely, we had to talk about a wide receiver that may have broken a record or so, but I think Trubisky's time was almost as shocking as anything we saw during this Combine. But there you go, guys. Those are my top 5. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section below. If this is your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. Smash the like button if you enjoyed. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.